Hey, I'm going to be walking through the network for the DGNF edit I did, the Yung Fazo DGNF edit that I posted on here, TikTok, and on Instagram. And this project utilizes TouchDesigner, Arduino, and a little bit of Davinci Resolve, but that's only for the text, so I don't really need to go over that section in Davinci. So this is just going to be the TouchDesigner and Arduino aspects. So primarily I'm using TouchDesigner, and I'm just using an Arduino distance sensor to control the value that I want to be using for certain parameters, because I realized that you could connect an Arduino to TouchDesigner, and I thought it was really cool, so I just wanted to find a way to mess around with it, even if it is simple. So you don't really need an Arduino for this, but on the off chance that you do want to do this, all you need is your Arduino of choice, and then hook it up to a distance sensor. And then for the Arduino IDE code, I'll have a screenshot running through this video, just because you can't have the IDE and TouchDesigner running at the same time. You have to upload the script to the Arduino and then close the IDE, and then it'll be recognized in TouchDesigner. Otherwise it's fighting for, I believe it's fighting for a port otherwise. So to begin, I started with a metaball. Normally this is just a circle, but I tweaked some parameters because I wanted to get this sort of diamond looking shape, and then I wanted to get more of an actual pointy diamond later on. And as you can see, the Z value on the rotate is being changed by the output value of the distance sensor, which is 5. And for my distance sensor, I'm just using an old glasses case at a distance that I liked, because I messed around with how far and how near the case was to the distance sensor until I got a value that I thought looked good. But you don't have to do this exactly. You can, mess around. I always say that when you follow a tutorial, you should still be messing around with parameters yourself, unless they're absolutely vital to making it look the way it does. But in my opinion, messing around with stuff, and especially messing around with things in a tutorial, is what ramps up learning really fast, at least for me. But anyway, from this transform, I put it into the rendering setup of a geometry, a camera, and a light. And for the camera, I have the same Arduino value being put on the rotate Y, just because I wanted it to be fixed at that specific area. And then I have an abs_time.seconds times 4 on the rotate Z, just because that's how I wanted it to rotate. And that's the speed, and that's just how I wanted it to rotate on that axis and at that speed. And so from there, I put it into 2 renders, but really what you can do instead of putting into 2 renders is just put it into the same render. I don't really know why I didn't just do it this way, because it does the exact same things and you're using one less operator, but it doesn't matter. I connected this into 4 operators here. I connected it into a transform top, and I rotated it 90 degrees just for some variation. I connected it into a noise top to make it look like it's rotating, but baked underneath this sort of layer of fuzz, snow and fuzz. And from there, I connected the base render and the noise top to this displace top, and it made this edge looking kind of thing without any of the edge information of the noise, or specifically the inside of this little gem shape. And then I also connected it into a bloom, because I really love using bloom on stuff. I am a sucker for bloom and composites, which you can see immediately bloom into composite. And I'm just connecting the displace and the bloom and the transform here. I'm just using all 3 of these to get this sort of dual rotating gem thing, just because I wanted a lot of information going into the displace I added, which makes this look like this sort of morphing abstract shape. And all I did was just connect the comp into the 90 degrees rotated render to get the parameters for this. And I tweaked with the UV weight as well. I then connected this into a pixel relocator and set the weight to be 11 because I wanted it to be more dramatic and generate these sort of points distributed everywhere. And from that pixel relocator, I connected 3 ways. I connected it into a bloom, I connected it into a noise, and then I later on connected it into a reorder, but I'll go over that when we reach there. From the bloom, I initially put it into a mirror, but I didn't really like how the mirror looked, so I just bypassed it. And then I connected the noise after adjusting a bunch of settings to get this sort of rainbowy shimmery thing, and adding an abs time.seconds on the harmonic gain into an RGB key because I wanted to get rid of all the black. I just wanted to just be the colors, but I also dropped the alpha as well. So as you can see, I didn't mess with any RGB or common. It's just inverting the alpha, and just changing the value of the inverting alpha. And again, I also connected it into a mirror, but I didn't like how it looked either, so I bypassed this mirror as well. And so what I ended up doing effectively is just connect this bloom and this RGB key into this composite, which looks like this because of the mode I went with, Z-Film, which was determined by using this constant shop. And in the last tutorial I made, I explained how to cycle through drop-down menus quickly. So if you haven't seen that tutorial, all I did is I just added a constant chop, and then I dragged in viewer active mode the value of the channel onto the drop-down menu and just did a chop reference. So like this, chop reference, and then it just takes the value that this channel is set to, which you can change by going up in steps of 1 and just moving your mouse left or right. And so I moved through a bunch of different ones until I liked the one, or until I found one that I liked, which was Z-Film. And then from there, I put everything into a reorder, which changes how the information is displayed based on each input being selected for a different color. And so normally these are all input 1 and it's RGB alpha, but I just changed this to be input 1 is red, input 2 0, input 3 is blue, and then input 1 is still alpha. And so that gave me this very red looking composition here. And I threw it into yet another mirror that I didn't like, so I bypassed it again. And then these RGB delay and contrast are literally doing nothing, so you can ignore those. So I just connected it to a null for safe measure, and then I did a few things here. So I connected it into an HSV adjust just to make it slightly more orange. Very, very, very slightly. And then from there, I connected it into a channel mix to change the colors a little more drastically, with a little bit more choice, because you get this range of menus, or I guess range of values, I should say. And then from this initial null, I also connected it into an edge just to collect the edge information at a strength of 0.26, just because I didn't want it to be either too much or too little. So I just did 0.26 after dragging it a little bit. And then I connected that into a blur, just because there's already a lot of noisy information in the channel mix, so I wanted to put it into a blur so that it's not super conflicting. And then I grabbed the DGNF video from Yung Fazo's YouTube, and then I set 2 of them to start at different times and last for different amounts of time. So the first one, I had it start from the very beginning and just end at 5 seconds because that's the part of the video that I liked, which was supposed to be more of the main element. And then, as you can see here, I initially tried to mash up this in Quessy Juggin, but it just did not work very well. So I just overlaid it over top of itself, and it ended up producing something really cool. But the way that I layered it is that I connected both of them into a switch and turned on blend between inputs, because normally it just has like a certain threshold that it reaches before it changes into the other input. So I just did 0.52, which is the value that I liked, so it blends both of these together. And then I connected it into a composite with the channel mix and blur channels, or blur operators, sorry, which was also determined, the effect was determined using this constant method I was talking about earlier. And so the reason why there's a transform going from the switch into the composite is because this is a full screen 1920 by 1080 video, but I'm making this video or this rendering in TouchDesigner at 1080 by 1920, so it's vertical resolution. And when you're putting in a standard HD video on like a normal resolution into a vertical resolution set in an operator, it's going to stretch it really thin. It's going to stretch it twice as thin, just because that's how the resolution works. As you're just swapping the height and the width. And so to fix that, you set it into a transform and just set the scale to be twice on the X so that it stretches it back to normal, because if I don't do that, really thin. Everything's really thin. And so you lose some visual information, but it stretches the way that you want it to. And this is how I wanted it to look. So I was completely fine with that, because that's just how video works, and my brain is centered around that. So from this comp, I then connected it into an RGB key, and then from there I connected it into an HSV adjust to adjust the colors, get it more like sandy and beachy kind of looking. And then from the HSV adjust, I connected it into a level, which was mostly done just to invert the colors, because that's primarily what I did, is just invert the colors. And then I tweaked with the gamma and the contrast a little bit, mostly the contrast, because if I reset this, it's a little bright, but if I fix it, the darks are a lot more impactful and the light isn't as persistent, I guess. So each element feels more impactful than if this was just like a regular, like that. Feels a bit washed out here. And that's the main aspect of the TouchDesigner project. If we go back to the start here for the Arduino, because this is also affecting a few parameters. This can actually get deleted because it's not getting used. Yeah, this null is controlling this value, this Z value on the rotate, this Y value on the camera rotate, this displace weight, it's controlling both the X and the Y displacement. And then for, where is it? It's underneath that, yeah. It's also influencing the hue offset on this HSV adjust. So if I move that, if I move the glasses case, you can see the value changing pretty dramatically there. Just move it back to the original position at 5. I will be making a separate tutorial for connecting the Arduino, just in case the explanation I gave here wasn't clear, and it'll be more in depth. But that's how I got the bulk of this edit done, was in TouchDesigner. The only things that I did inside of Davinci Resolve was adding the sound, which you can do directly in TouchDesigner if you just add the audio file chop. So if I wanted to grab like any song, I would just do audio file in, and then audio device out. So obviously it's not DGNF, it's just the standard one because that's what I pulled up. But then you would drag this onto your movie file out chop, or movie file out top, sorry. Onto the audio chop section here. That's how you would do that. It's grayed out here, but normally it is not. So that's just how you would do that. You just drag it onto there, and then it's like, yo, chop reference, and you select yes, chop reference. Yeah, that's the walkthrough on how I made that video. If you have any questions or if something wasn't exactly very clear, please feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I will get that sorted for you.